Welcome to the podcast hosted by timecam.com on how to stay on top of your work.
Hi guys, this is Kate. I'm back again. In today's episode, I'm going to talk to Margaret Meloni about being a good project manager. Margaret is a certified project management professional. She helps people in becoming project managers with her valuable lessons. So if you feel like you want to become a professional project manager or are looking for inspiration, you are in the right place. So hello Margaret, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thanks so much.
Okay, that's great. I'm very happy to have you here today with me. And I'd like to begin with asking you the question, how did your way to the project management looked like? How did it happen that you became a person who teaches others how to become a leader or a project manager?
Well, first I was a project manager, and I became a project manager by accident. So some people who know me have already heard me say I'm an accidental project manager. And that's not my own phrase. I got it from someone else. But it means that I didn't know I was going to be a project manager. I actually started my career many years ago as a computer programmer. And I wanted to be in some kind of leadership role. And I didn't really know what that was. And to be honest, I got a little frustrated and I gave up. And I thought, well, I'll just code. I like coding, so I'll just code forever until I retire. And then one day I was offered this job, and the job was to help a group of people through some data conversions. And I wasn't supposed to do the programming. I wasn't supposed to be a technical lead. I was supposed to help this group of people finish something by a certain date. And at that company at the time, project management was new, so not all of us knew what it was. But one day in a meeting, somebody looked at me and he said, well, you're the project manager. And so that's when I learned my title. So I fell into it by accident, but I liked it. And when people started calling me a project manager, I thought, well, I better go figure out what this is. And so I read and took some classes and, eventually got my PMP, and that was my beginning.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds fun. So there are many people who want to become project managers, but it's not always easy. What tips would you give to a person who wants to become a project manager or a good leader?
Okay. Well, the first thing is I would say if you are currently employed, look for opportunities with your employer. Go to the person you work for and express your interest and ask for some opportunities to manage part of a project or to manage a smaller project or two to get yourself started. If you have a Project Management Institute chapter around you, and they're all around the globe, so possibly you do, go to the Project Management Institute meetings and get to know people who are already project managers. Possibly select one as a mentor, and some Project Management Institute chapters have a mentoring program. If you don't think that you're going to be able to act as a project manager in your own current organization, do some volunteer work where you can lead some projects and get some experience leading some projects outside of work. So there are quite a few ways to do that. And then I wouldn't be a good instructor of project management if I didn't say and get some training too.
So when it comes to trainings and all that stuff you mentioned, do you think it's really helpful in project management, and how maybe thanks to these skills that we gain on that type of courses or trainings, how can we be a good leader and a project manager?
Okay. So of course I'm going to say yes, I think training is useful because now I am, full-time training and development and teaching. But that being said, if you go and take a class and you don't do anything with it, then it isn't good. It isn't a good use of your time. And so it's good to take the class and look for courses where you're asked to work and run projects, even if it's, a case study, and you're asked to work with other people on group projects. And when you take classes, then really try to take what you've learned and start using it at work or in your volunteer work, and make sure people know that that's what you're doing. And that's the best way to make your training useful. And now, because I talked too much, I forget the second part of your question. So will you ask me the second part again? Thanks.
That's fine. It's not a problem. How to be a good leader and a project manager, basically.
Yeah, well, that's important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That is such a big topic. And I'm sure as you talk to people, you're going to collect so many good leadership tips. One of the best ones, I think, for me is be a good listener. Be a good listener. And in fact, this is on my mind because just the other day I read this little article online. It was on how a good leader speaks last. And I thought this was really helpful. And the person who wrote the article even mentioned how this was a technique that Nelson Mandela used to use when he got people together to talk about, an issue or plans or things. He would listen and he would give his opinion last. Now, I think some people, when they're the leaders, they think, oh, I'm the boss, so my opinion matters the most. And so I'm going to tell everybody how it's going to be. And that's a choice. You can tell I'm not in favor of that choice. But the beauty of this approach is then if you sit back and you listen and you let everyone else in the room speak first, it also helps you think and gather your own thoughts. And it helps you understand what your people are thinking, which then helps you pick the right way to communicate with them.
When we talk about speaking last, do you think it's really important to respect other people as a project manager and have like an open attitude toward others?
I think it's one of the best tools that you can have. I think that, especially since many project managers are running projects and they have the responsibility, but they don't really have the authority. You're not really the boss. And so a lot of times your best tool is influence and persuasion. Influence people when they want to be influenced by you. I mean, sure, there's some people who can just yell and say, just do it or you're going to be in trouble. Again, not my favorite style of leading. But when people want to work with you and they want to support you in the project, that's the best possible scenario. And so listening, people like to feel heard. In fact, a lot of times when people are upset at work, it's because they don't feel heard or they don't feel appreciated. So we want to listen, and also we want to let people know we appreciate them.
Yes, that's really good tip, and I agree with that. I have a question regarding young people who enter the market and the world of project management. What tip you would give to such people who are young and unexperienced? And because, the world is harsh and difficult for young people, especially because they don't have any experience and don't know how certain things work. So what would you say to such people who often give up because they don't feel appreciated?
Oh, that is tough. And, I think this is something every generation has dealt with, is that the generations in front of them sometimes talk to them like they're kids. In fact, as I'm saying that, when I was in my very first programming job out of college, I worked with a man who actually always called me kid. And it really bothered me because I felt so disrespected. So one day I let him know that, I didn't appreciate that. And he did stop. So I'm going to say, don't give up. Don't be intimidated by people just because they're older than you are. In fact, I know some people who unfortunately are intimidated by people who are younger than they are. And so sometimes that person that you're working with, who you look at and go, wow, this person could be my mom or my dad or something. At the workplace, your colleagues. Now you want to respect the fact that they've been working longer than you have, and let's hope that they know more. But I will tell you, one of my biggest disappointments when I was brand new was that people that were older than I was didn't always act older than I was. But again, you can find somebody who has been in the field for a while and seek them out as a mentor. Rely on their expertise. I think if you approach them in a way that you're running the project, but you respect the experience they bring to it, so they don't think like, oh, you could be my kid and you're trying to boss me around, which shame on people for thinking that, right? So, I mean, I think there's so many different ways, and, everybody came from a place of no experience at one time, and hopefully people will remember that. And even some people that you look at and you think, oh, they've been working, forever. some of us have restarted our careers more than one time. So you could be dealing with somebody who's, older, but doesn't necessarily have tons of experience.
Okay. That's useful, especially for me, because I'm young and I'm kind of entering the market and the business world, and I see how things work, and it's not always easy. So your tips are really valuable. I'd like to talk about managing maybe time and people at the same time, because at Time Camp, we solve problems with time management, and we try to be as flexible as possible. And also we adjust our tools and try to be elastic. How do you manage people and time? Do you somehow combine these two things or not really?
I think you have to. When you're a project manager, I don't see how you can make a different choice and still be a project manager and be successful. One of the things that I do, and this isn't the approach everybody will like, is I arrange my day so that when most people are in the office, I try to be available to them. Now, the challenge is that so many of us have millions of meetings, right? So you have meetings. But I try to arrange it so that I am available for my team to talk to me. And then during hours, because some days you're going to work overtime anyway, and I'm not in favor of working overtime all of the time. But if there's a time of day where I know I'm going to work anyway and most people won't be working, that's the time for me to work on things that I need to be alone. But I feel like it's not fair to other people to say, in the middle of the day, hey, I need to be alone now, so I can't talk to you. Because my job as a project manager is to remove obstacles from other people so that they can do work, so I can help them do their work. And if I'm not available to move things out of the way so that they can make their deadlines, they're going to feel unappreciated. They're going to turn around maybe and work on something else. They're probably going to miss their deadline. So that's one approach. I think it's a good idea for all of us. This is not it. No, I'm not going to tell you anything new. Every day you should know what your 3 most important things are. What are the 3 things you need to achieve that day? And if you can do more, awesome. But I think 3 is a good manageable list, because you think of your day. Like, you have a plan to do one thing, then you get a call to do something else, et cetera, et cetera. So if you know what the 3 most important things are that you need to achieve every day, and you're committed to achieving those 3 things, and stay focused. I think when we talk about time management, the challenges most people have are distractions, not being able to focus on priorities, things like that.
I'd like to ask you about your inspirations now, because you have a degree, MA degree in Buddhist studies. And do you somehow apply the philosophy of Buddhism into your work, or not really?
I think that more and more I do, and I think we all bring who we are to our workplace. So yes, I am a person who's been studying Buddhism, and I'm actually working on my dissertation to earn my PhD, which hopefully I will finish this year. And so something that has emerged to me, I've always thought that the way we treat people is important, and that can be true of a person, whether you're Christian, Muslim, a Jew, a Hindu, a Buddhist. But I've always been interested in treating people well, and specifically in being compassionate. How can we as leaders be compassionate to one another? And so that's something that I definitely bring with me, and I'm starting to talk about more and more, because to me that's just an important thing.
Yes, it definitely is. So beside that, do you have any other inspirations in books that you read and that you would recommend to our audience?
Gosh, there are so many books that it is difficult. So here's what I will say. I think it's good to keep balanced by reading business books, but if you enjoy fiction, also reading some fun books. I'm a big fan of reading because I think it keeps you creative, and it helps us have a more varied vocabulary. I think it keeps us mentally sharp. So I think keep your reading balanced, That being said, something I'm reading right now that was recommended to me that's been pretty interesting, it's called The Four Tendencies, and I believe it's by Gretchen Rubin. And it talks about how each of us handle our responsibilities, the responsibilities that come from outside, and it's almost like personality types, but how you handle responsibilities. And I think it's really interesting. And I think it's particularly interesting for project managers because it talks about, like, there's that person who's like 100% always going to, if they said they're going to do something, they're 100% always going to do it, almost like a rules follower personality. There's the rebel who's like, I'm not going to do anything anybody says, even myself. There's the questioner who is going to question why they should do things. There's this person who feels obligated, who's going to take care of things for other people before they take care of things for themselves. And it's a really interesting way of looking at ourselves and other people. So I'll say that's what I'm currently reading, and that's why I'm bringing that up.
Okay, that's nice. I'm definitely going to check this out because it sounds interesting. I'd like to ask you, what is like the number one rule without which you cannot imagine your work? It's something you always apply to your work that, is really important to you.
Ooh, the number one rule that's really important to me about my work.
Or maybe you don't have such rule. You just, go with the flow.
No, I think I appreciate this. I think it's a good question. I'm thinking, so this is what I think. Because I'm at a certain stage in my career, I'm a little bit older and, I've been working in the field for a while and working for myself for a while. There's a saying, and it goes something like this. If the answer isn't heck yes, only they say something else, but I'm going to say heck, keep it a family show. If the answer isn't heck yes, then the answer is heck no. And what that means to me is, at this stage in the game, if I don't love the idea of doing something, I'm probably not going to do it. So I'm going to take, projects and discussions where I'm excited and I see the benefit. Like, for example, talking to you today. I don't talk to everyone. I'm not saying lots of people ask to talk to me. I'm just saying I don't talk if I don't think it's a good fit, or I can't be full, or we can't have a good conversation together. So there are times when it's okay to say no.
Okay, I'm happy you said yes to this conversation because it's really, really inspiring. Okay, so I have last question to you. This podcast title is How to Stay on Top of Your Work. Mm-hmm. How do you stay on top of your work? Do you have any particular strategies or practices?
Yes. And part of it does go back to a couple of things we've already talked about today. So it's good because this is a good summary. It's always knowing my priorities at different levels. The priorities for my life. So like I'm going to drill this down. So in life, I am a person who is, has a career where I am helping other people become amazing project managers. I'm also working on my dissertation. I also have friends and family that I want to spend time with. And so it's about keeping those priorities clear so that one of them doesn't become all-consuming. And then within that, it's knowing for each of those what I expect to accomplish and when. And then so that each day I know what are the 3 things that I need to accomplish that day. And that I have a clear understanding of how much I'm willing to give to each. And every week it could be different. Like some weeks might be, this week I'm really going to work and I'm not going to see anyone until the weekend. And some weeks it might be, I'm going to take off in the middle of the day and have lunch with a friend. But it's all about being clear about your priorities. For me, it's all about the understanding of those priorities.
Mm-hmm. All right. That sounds great. Okay, so thank you very much for the interview. It was fun talking to you. I really enjoyed it.
Me too.
I wish you a lot of success and all the best. And thank you once more.
Thank you for letting me talk to you and to your audience. And I wish you only good things.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Be well.
Have a nice day. And you guys make sure to follow Margaret and visit her website, margaretmeloni.com. You can find more information about my amazing guest below this podcast, but also in Timecam's article on top 83 project management influencers of 2017. Stay tuned for the next episode and make sure to subscribe to our podcast. See you next time. Bye-bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Timecam. You can listen to it on iTunes and SoundCloud. Subscribe to get more content and always stay on top of your work.